What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by the Cage Warriors Supremo, the play-by-play guy, the media guy, the all-around fighter, breaker-upper for Cage Warriors 192 preview show, Brad Wharton. Brad, how are you? Are you okay after the trauma of a couple of weeks ago? Have you survived?
I think I may need an all expenses paid 3-week trip to Tahiti over the summer to recover from it. But I'm sure once that's done and dusted, I'll make a full recovery.
Indeed. I hope Graham Island is listening. You deserve it. Like, you definitely deserve it. We might as well start on that before we get to 192, because there was obviously a lot of controversy around it. Could you explain to the situation maybe to people who didn't see it? Obviously, we're talking about the Liam Gittins-Giordano situation. I suppose a little bit of the background and what actually happened in the weigh-ins last time out.
Yeah, well, obviously these guys have had a previous fight. They fought in March of this year, and ahead of that fight there was a lot of back and forth online. You know, they're both into their trash talking a little bit. Gittins perhaps slightly better at it, and certainly capable of getting under the skin, but you know, those next gen lads, when it comes to the online trash talk game, they're pretty much world champs to a man. And then the fight obviously ended in a lot of controversy, you know, an eye poke, Giordano telling the referee he couldn't continue, you know, which is a perfectly reasonable and legitimate thing to do in a fist fight if you can't see. But, you know, there's always going to be people saying, well, you know, fighters don't say that to a referee. If you want to stay in the fight, you say you can see and then you deal with it. You know, look, you can argue the toss over that until the cows come home. You know, people probably have opinions on both sides, but unless you're the guy in there, you know, your opinion might not be as relevant. But look, the rematch is organized, and this time, you know, Giordano kind of stepped back from all the trash talk. He didn't do any. He kind of just said, look, I'll do my talking in the cage, left Liam to it. That didn't really deter Liam. And then, you know, I kind of said fair play to Giordano. He actually kept a cool head throughout. And then obviously you see everyone's kind of seen the video now, the face-off at the weigh-ins, and there's a little bit of pushing and shoving, which is part of the game. And his coach kind of just loses his head and boots Liam Gittins, which you can't do. You know, Paul Redmond, our co-commentator, made a very good point. You know, it might not have been a crow cop, take his head off, send him to the hospital or the cemetery kind of kick, but he's dehydrated, he's dried out. You hit him on the wrist, you hit him on the fingers or something, and that fight gets cancelled. It's absolute chaos. And you look, you just can't be doing that as a cornerman, as a second, you know, whatever it is. If that had happened in America, that guy loses his license. So, you know, Cage Warriors had to take a view on it, and the view was that he wouldn't be allowed to act as a cornerman on Cage Warriors forever, I believe. You know, forever's a strong word in MMA, but certainly for the foreseeable future. It looked like everything was going to be fine. Everything was going to crack on as planned. He had 2 other cornermen with him, and I believe they were arranging getting a third guy in. And I believe some point overnight, or perhaps very early Saturday morning, late Friday night, Saturday morning, Giordano decided to withdraw from the fight. Yeah, just a poor situation, really. You know, nobody wanted it to end like that. Everybody wanted to see the fight. But look, unfortunately, you can't attack a fighter as a corner at the way. It's bad enough one fighter hitting another at the weigh-ins. We've seen fights called off for that. But if you're the corner man, you're twice the size of the guy. Just stay out of it. And look, a combustible situation as well. You know, that room's full of guys from the opposite guy's gym. You know, what do you expect to happen when you kick the guy? It's the kind of thing that could start off potentially a serious incident, which has long-lasting repercussions for the promotion, for everyone involved. So yeah, not good.
No, I have a slightly different opinion on it to everyone else, I think, maybe, or well, to some people. I thought it was the banning him for life thing was a bit harsh. I think, like, and the reason I think it's a bit harsh is because what happened afterwards. I think if you had said, like, this guy is banned from Cage Warriors for this event, you can't act like that and be present, you know, and whatever happens in the future happens in the future. I think once you say you're banning someone's coach for life, I actually think Giordano was backed into a corner and he'd no option but to, like, if let's say if that was, you know, Paul Redmond and Andy Ryan was banned for life, You think Paul Redmond would fight for that promotion the next day? He probably wouldn't, or it goes for anyone. The same. You think if Paul Rimmer was banned for life, that Liam Gittins would fight or Paddy Pimblett would fight or whatever? I don't think they would. So it's a bit different because maybe those lads are closer to the promotion and we know maybe a little bit more and stuff. I think it could, I understand what Graham Bylan was doing and I understand why he did it, but at the end of the day, I think it was a little bit of a mistake. Look, the first mistake was kicking fucking Gittins. He shouldn't have done it. It was absolutely terrible. I'm definitely not backing up that lad at all. It was absolutely an idiotic thing to do. And Adam Vintry came in. It was like Dylan Tuke was in the corner or something. He came so fast across there and all. But at the end
I think
of the
Ventry
day,
said, he's not actually moved that fast for about 7 years. So.
yeah. At the end of the day,
I don't necessarily disagree with you, man. And like I said, forever's a long time. There's no reason to think that this isn't something that maybe could have been water in the bridge in a year or two's time or whatever else. But, like I say, if that was in America, that guy loses his license. He's not cornering again in that state. And maybe not cornering again in another state either. So, look, the decision was made and he has to deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Maybe. We've seen people do a lot of bad things.
Maybe. Maybe.
Probably not. Let's be honest. Probably not. Anyway. Yeah, but it was a mad situation. Do you know what the weird thing about it is, right? We're so messed up as MMA. Someone like that should get banned and shouldn't be allowed to do it. But my first thought is hold on. It'll be fine. Nothing actually did happen. But anyway,
you didn't kick him that hard.
Yeah,
it's insane, isn't it? If it was football and someone just booted someone in the face, you wouldn't be making excuses.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah, maybe that's
because we're in the not a real sport.
Yes, that's true.
There we are.
That's true. Anyway, the fight that did happen, how good is this Omar Tugarev? Jesus,
my goodness,
unbelievable! What a performance that was. In 2 weeks' notice, I believe the lads have him on the All Triangle this week, and go over to the Severe MMA YouTube channel and watch that. But I believe he was working on a shipping container when he got the call for it out in Finland, and he had to fly back and absolutely amazing story. But this guy is unbelievable coming through the IMFs and all that. What a talent he is, Brad.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Chris had said, look, this guy's serious. This guy's the real deal. And, Chris has normally got a pretty good read on these things. And, Ian obviously spoke highly of him when bringing him in. And we've seen the track record he's got in the IMAFs. Been a professional for less than 18 months, I think. A great story that Chris sort of put out on social media about Omar basically saying to him in January, look, I want to be a professional MMA champion. And can we do that together? And here he is, he's done it. And I think despite all the, all the bigging up that Chris had done and the good things that we've heard about this guy and what we've seen, I think everyone was still surprised how he performed against a guy like James Power. And you and I have talked about James Power before. We probably both have a similar opinion on how good he is and how tough he is. And for Omar to go in and put on a performance like that against a guy of James Power's credentials, phenomenal stuff on 2 weeks' notice as well. They're not going to be lining up to fight this guy. They're really not.
Absolutely not. And it's interesting, the level of fighter we have at the moment coming through. Habarora fought in PFL at the weekend, but the fact that the two of them fought as amateurs not too long ago, and look where they are now, it's absolutely unbelievable. This guy looks a real talent. Let's get to this weekend in Cage Warriors 192, and we talked about title fights last week. We have another title fight this week for the flyweight strap. And Brad, could you argue that the flyweight title in Cage Warriors has actually been the best and most consistent belt, let's say, over the last 5 years and stuff? And maybe part of that is because of a guy like Shajidul who's been there and has been so consistent for so long. And he's obviously come in and out of Cage Warriors, but you've had other lads there as well. The likes of Sam Creasy and other people as well. This belt, in a world where a lot of people are getting signed to the UFC maybe very early, or people are getting, winning the title and going straight to the UFC, that the flyweight belt is actually one of the top level, most consistent belts that Cage Warriors have had in a long while. And this fight is an amazing one to top that off as well. But that flyweight belt, Brad, it's been brilliant for Cage Warriors for the last few years.
It really has. And I think that kind of speaks to, the last two champions that we've had, obviously the current champion, Shaj, and Sam Creasy before him, two veteran guys, two guys who've been around the circuit with a lot of experience, just two guys who were very good at winning fights. Obviously, the thing with Shaji is that He's not competed all that often. This is the first time in 2 years that Shaj is actually going to be able to get to the cage. He's supposed to compete a few times. The fight against Nicolas LeBlanc, which is one that we wanted to see for a very long time, fell through just a series of really unfortunate circumstances. Shaj injured the first time around, and then I believe last November they were supposed to fight in Newcastle, and we had the crazy weather conditions here in the UK where planes couldn't land. So LeBlanc's plane couldn't take off, and there was nothing coming into the UK within the next, I think it was 24, 48 hours. I think there was like potentially a flight that would have touched him down after the card had already started, which obviously you can't do. There's been no way in a medical and that kind of thing. So that one, scratched at the 11th hour. But look, Shaj, coming into this off a 2-year break, you've got to believe that the injuries are going to be healed up. He's going to be ready to go. He's determined. Every fight's going to count for so much at this stage in his career. I think all the pressure's probably on Shaj at this point. He's fighting a young guy who's, taking his first real test at that championship level. I think there's going to be a lot on Shad Chak's mind going into this one.
100%. Like he's 34 years of age as well, and he's the guy, as you said. Like he's been in there with Martignoni, Sam Carisi, Jake Hadley, Zamagulov. Like going back even to the likes of Damien Rooney a long time ago. Like he's 13 years a pro now, and like you'd be expecting him to beat everyone almost. The fact that like he's won 7 fights in a row now as well, but like
7 good fights as well.
7 very very good fights as well. Yeah, and Jawany Scott though is very hard to rule out. Like this is a fight that we don't get all that very often, where there's like this really kind of ordained veteran who we know how good he is against the guy who has shown us, in especially the last 3 fights, but further back beyond that even, that he's like a real good prospect, but still only 8 fights into his career. When he made his debut in 2022. Well, the other lad made his debut in 2012. Like there's a 10-year difference in there, and the fact that they're fighting is unusual. But like I've been so impressed with Jawany Scott. How impressed have you been sitting obviously cage side watching him for the last 4 fights in cage, whereas he's just looked absolutely amazing. Like I went back and watched that Gerard Harris fight, and it was a very competitive fight. Actually watching it back, but we know the level Gerard is. But this Jawany Scott is, what a prospect he is, unbelievable.
Yeah, the Jet Harris fight, one of my favorites actually in recent years. I just remember, and it's very rare because obviously we call him maybe 15 fights on the night, and then we're doing it every couple of weeks. It's very rare that I can even sit down immediately after the event and talking to the guys afterwards back at the hotel and clearly remember enjoying something so much as I did with that one. So it's something that really stuck in my mind, and it's one that I do like to go back and see every now and again. But, as far as Jawany goes, I've been on this bandwagon for a long time. He debuted with Cage Warriors as an amateur many, many years ago. So he does have, amateur fights dating back a good few years. It's not just, the past sort of 4 years he's been competing. If you look outside of MMA as well, he took some time away from the sport, did a bit of boxing, did a bit of powerlifting to a decent level. Like the kid's an athlete. And I remember after, he'd kind of taken a few years off MMA, and I was, for some reason, in Cyprus with Dan Mulvahedi and Ricky Wright and a few of the kind of UK MMA lads. We'd all gone out there to work on an event in Cyprus one week, and Jawany ended up being on that card. There was a few guys from GB Top Team on there, and I was like, oh, brilliant, finally getting into the pro ranks. And I mentioned it to Ian Dean, and Ian's of the same opinion as me. He's always been very high on Jawany. And we kind of told him good luck and everything, and Jawany sort of turned around and said, "Oh, hopefully get a couple of wins, and I'll be back on Cage Warriors." And here he is. So this is something that he's wanted to do and he's wanted to achieve for a long time, and he's kind of been fighting everyone that's been put in front of him. There's I would say it's quite a close division really, and then you've got the Sam Creasy, or you had the Sam Creasy rather, and now you've got the Shad Haque at the top, maybe a couple of steps above. So it's been open for many of these guys to kind of stake a claim. Obviously, LeBlanc was going to be in line, but circumstances led to that not happening. And Jawany's just been saying, right, well, I'll keep winning. Had a fantastic win against Johnny Tuma last time out. Nice highlight reel finish, and that's earned him the shot. And he gets to do it in London as well. So a hometown fight for him at the Indigo. Again, a lot for him to think about going into this one against one of the most storied and battle-tested veterans of the division. It's for me, a real coin toss of a fight.
There's a lot goes into this fight. So, like, if you think about it, like Jawany for the first time going to be going 5 rounds against the guy who's 15 fights, I think, that I've gone to the decision. Obviously, not all 5 rounds, but he's again a battle-tested veteran. He knows exactly what he's going to be like in rounds 3, 4, and 5. Whereas Jawany, to this level doesn't know that, and as well, a guy like Shajidul will push a guy like Jawany. He's got knowing that, and we saw in that Harris fight, like, both of them are pretty tired in that 3rd round. Can you fight to that pace again? And the other thing I would say, which is a positive, I think, for Jawany Scott, and I think to think about for Shajidul is, like, you look in those last 4 fights, and I watched all of them back in total and in parts, like the difference between the first fight, he was slipping all over the mat, if people remember that. But the difference between his fights, even the Ger Harris fights and the most recent fights, he just looks a lot cooler in there, just a lot more technical. And he always had the power and the accuracy and, big flying knees and big slams and things like that. As you said, an unbelievable athlete. But to put that kind of the coolness and calmness with it, like, what's going to be next is my question. Like, if you're Shajidul, like, what's he going to look like this time? Because if he's a little bit cool and a little bit more calm and, does maybe a little bit of the Yoel Romero where he's picking those big shots rather than going at it for, 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 minutes or 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it might be, could that actually benefit him as a fighter? And that would actually totally change him as a fighter as well, which is some 8 fights into your career. That's still very possible. So this is a really intriguing fight. How I know you're not going to give a picker out here, but how do you think this one will go? Like, if you were to envisage this fight, how do you think it plays out?
I think it plays out over 5 rounds, and I think Shajidul is a master at making these kind of fights play out over 5 rounds. You look at the Martignoni fight, and obviously Martignoni was coming down from bantamweight, and that took a little bit too much out of him. But when you think of Martignoni, you think of a guy who's very fast, very accurate, and has powerful, big punches. A knockout hitter at the lower weights. And Shajidul drew him into that 5-round fight, and I think that has to be the game plan against a younger, potentially a little bit faster, more athletic Jawany Scott. You've got to make it a slog. You've got to make it a marathon. And as we say, he's got so much experience of doing that to guys over the years. Jawany, does he want to risk going all out in the first 2 rounds looking for that finish? Shaj isn't a guy who gets finished very often. We have seen it before. Jake Hadley, obviously, the last time Shaj lost was Jake Hadley, and that was a knockout. So is Jawany going to be banking on that athleticism, that power early on? Is he going to go all in on those first 2 or 3 rounds? That's the intriguing question for me personally. I see it going into 4, maybe 5. It's going to be a hot night. I think we're predicting 30, 31 degree temperatures in London. I can't remember off the top of my head what the air conditioning is like in that building, but even so, it's going to be hot. It's going to be at the end of the night. That room you could believe is going to be a bit humid. So is that going to be a factor for these guys? We'll have to wait and see. But look, what I'm expecting, what I'm looking forward to is a beautiful chess match. And I think these are the 2 ideal guys to bring that forth for the fans.
100%. Let's touch on a couple of the other fights. The one that really stands out to me is Cameron Else against Shirzad Qadrian. Obviously Shirzad in that tournament last year, an unbelievable run, and came through it. And, like, if you look at the last 4 wins in a row, the last 2 especially, Alexander Loof and Weslley Maia, after having lost to Weslley Maia, the only loss of his career, to get that back and be another guy who's 7-1 against it's funny to call Cameron Else a veteran, but he's 34 years of age and 17 fights in now. It's weird, but like, I think the thing in this one is like the finishing ability of Cameron Else. Even though, funny enough, his last fight against Aris McEwen back in Cage Warriors went to decision, but what is it, 10 of his 11 wins have been inside the distance. Even 5 of the 6 losses have been inside the distance as well, which is crazy, I suppose. And he's been in there with such good guys. But like, Cameron Else coming back, obviously after the stint in the UFC didn't go amazing, he coming back to Cage Warriors, it felt in that last fight like this is kind of the place for him. But you're going to have to beat really good guys for that to be the case, considering where you have been in the past, considering your age, and considering probably the lofty expectations maybe. And Qadrian is exactly that guy that you're going to have to beat. He's not 34, he's 24, a young guy who's, he is just waiting for that opportunity. Obviously, it passed him by for the last year. He's been out of the cage for a year. Obviously, there was an injury or something there, Brad, wasn't there as well? He was supposed to fight for the title. Am I gone mad, or something happened, didn't it?
Well, what was obviously originally the plan was that he would fight for the belt in, I believe it was going to be March. Obviously, winning that prize fighter tournament, it was the $50,000 and the title shot.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the way Ramadan fell this year, it was earlier than usual. And obviously, asking a guy to do a camp or a fight or whatever during Ramadan, not ideal. So it's obviously then the Giordano Gittins fight had to happen, and then the way that ended, the rematch had to happen. So obviously, as a young guy, Shirzad, he was maybe happy sitting out the 6 months or whatever. Can't just sit there and not fight. Needs to compete. And, credit to him, probably could have taken a much easier fight than Cameron Else, but wanted to go out there, fight a tough guy. Cam's exactly the same. He's not fighting just anybody. He's at that stage in his career. He's actually 38, not 34. So he is at that stage in his career now where I think for him, especially, it's big fights only. He wants a belt. And, look, you beat Shirzad, you're up next, right?
100%. And it's an interesting fight as well, because we know Shirzad likes to wrestle an awful lot. Like that first Maia fight, I think he went for about 20 takedowns. I think his striking has improved a bit, but Cameron Else on the ground is really good as well. And sometimes we call person's a finisher, but like this is a real finisher, like power in his hands and the ability to finish on the ground as well. Like I think Qadrian, I don't know if the odds are up yet. I think he'd probably be the favorite going in here, but like, and I'm not sure, but even if he is or if he isn't, Cameron Else, he has a chance against anyone because of that finishing ability. So I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see that one. I just mentioned
defensively as well. You look at the fight between Cameron and Reece McEwen. You got caught in that armbar. I've never seen an armbar so tight and someone not tapped from it. So that comes with this, that veteran knowledge, right? He's been in probably a million of those things over the years. He knows what his limits are. He knows how long he can let it go. And to be perfectly honest, probably not the kind of guy who's going to tap anyway, even if the arm is going to go. I can't wait for this. These guys have been going back and forth on each other. I think Cameron said, look, he comes to lay and pray. I come to fight. And Shirzad's just, okay, fine. I'll just take you down and mash you and make this really unpleasant for 15 minutes.
Yeah. And like, look, what Shirzad did, this is probably the number one contender fight. But then the fight after, Weslley, Maia and Aidan Stephen, like I would, and maybe people disagree with me, but I think their last two wins, like Aidan Stephen beating Jordy Bacchus and Weslley Maia beating Alexander Luff, I think both of them were maybe unexpected. And when both guys win those fights and then they fight each other, if you're going on a 2-fight win streak, let's say it's either Luff and Stephen or Bacchus and Maia, that's a really good 2-fight win streak to put you right in contention to fight for the title. And let's say, the other fight maybe is a little bit lackluster, it goes 50 minutes and there's a finish in this, a big submission, maybe they could drop in there and get that title shot. This is an important fight for both guys at this stage of their careers. So like Aidan Stephen, I think he's been threatening it for a long time, and you could say the same about Weslley and Maia, but this is an interesting fight as well, and maybe a mini bantamweight tournament here, Brad.
Yeah, look, one thing we know about mixed martial arts is that we know nothing about what's going to happen next, right? Fight results, how fights we think are going to playing out completely different. You think something might be a 3-round slugfest and it might be absolutely shocking, and you think, right, well, that guy can't go on and fight for the title or whatever else. There's a million things, injuries. Who's to say Shirzad Qadrian submits Cameron Else in 30 seconds, doesn't get called up for the contender series? Who's to say that Cameron Else, who's been in the UFC, knocks out Shirzad, doesn't get a quick call up to the contender series, to replace someone who's fallen out with injury? There's so many things that can happen. I think if Weslley and Aidan aren't going into this fight thinking this is the put your hand up, who wants a title shot fight, then they really need to, and I guarantee both of them are. I know Aidan, as obviously, like you say, he's been so close for so long. And you said the same thing about Weslley. Obviously, fought for the belt against Jack Shaw under very strange circumstances on his Cage Warriors debut many, many years ago. 24 hours notice, I think. He wants a proper crack at that title. And I think with the performances he's had in recent years, went over to PFL, beat McGrillen over 3 rounds in a really fun fight, come back to Cage Warriors, got that crazy submission over Loof, put in a solid performance against Shirzad in the tournament. He's come close enough, man. And I think, again, if you can stop Aidan Stephen, you've got to have him there as an option.
100%. I want to talk a little bit about the two Irish guys here. Trevor McKingo fight. That fight is off, but you're looking for an opponent for him, or what's the update on that, Brad?
So I believe, as we're recording this today, which is Monday afternoon, I believe Trevor's just been told earlier today that the fight won't happen. He was originally supposed to fight Conor Hayes, who's a former Cage Warriors Academy champion. Conor unfortunately had to withdraw from that one, and I think it's just got too late in the day now. I know Ian Dean was trying to get him someone, but unfortunately it's not come to pass. So what I'm expecting is that he'll be on possibly the Ireland card, or we've got a busy few months coming up from September onwards. So really unfortunate there. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing his Cage Warriors debut.
I can only imagine how much tougher it is. Like, if you're looking for a lightweight or a bantamweight, but when it's a 205, he'd probably even take a fight at heavyweight. It's always tough to fight. So that's unfortunate, but I suppose not surprising at this late stage. The other Irish guy on the card, obviously, is Liam Hill, and he's as my colleague Ian O'Neill keeps talking about. He's fighting Stephen Hill for who's going to be the king of the hill. So it's an interesting.
Thanks, Ian Dean. Thank you for that one. Hill versus Hill, the commentator's nightmare.
Yeah. What are you going to go? Are you going to go Leon and Stephen? Or are you go? What
That's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has to be. You're going to have to. Hilly. One's Hill and one's Hilly. What's the professional against? Hold on, what's the other nickname? The Hillbilly Hammer. Do you know what? You could go there. But it's an interesting fight.
Two very sick nicknames. Very good
nicknames. First of all, on Stephen Hill, obviously, he had the run in Bellator after, coming through, I suppose, the local scene, and, to go in there against a guy like Mike Chipman, so I suppose early in your career, he lost that fight, but that's, I suppose there's a belief in him when you put him into a fight like that. And we've seen Leon Hill in there against some very, very good guys as well. Obviously he came up short against Ewan Davis, but he beat Dimitri Grillian, Marcin Zimbella, and that win over Tommy Hawthorne the last time was really, really good as well. And coming out of the gym, obviously Team KF is doing amazing things at the moment. This is a very, very interesting fight, isn't it? And I suppose a big one for the division as well, Brad, with Stephen Hill coming in trying to make his claim, and Leon Hill trying to rise those ranks again.
Yeah, I really like this one. Big fan of Leon, have been for a long time. You talk about like those wins that he had, like the recent one over Tommy and the Dimitri Grillian one, all finishes as well, right? I think he's finished every professional victory. Super talented, really fun to watch, really fun to commentate on. And then you look at it from Stephen Hill's point of view, coming into the promotion, you want to beat a known quantity like that. It's great coming in, maybe beating another debut guy. But when there's a guy who's, familiar to Cage Warriors fans, if he can come in here and get a finish, kudos to him. He's going to show immediately where he is in the pecking order in the division. So big fight for both these guys. Leon, I believe, hasn't competed for a year. So again, for him coming back, wants to show that he's not lost a step and he's still capable of getting finishes against dangerous guys. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I do have to point out, Sean, we do have one more Irish interest on this card. Okay. Recently added. I think Friday it was confirmed, Saturday perhaps. Adam Shelley stepping in on late notice to fight Tariq Pell, which has got banger written all over it. Big fan of Adam Shelley, big fan of Tariq Pell. I think they're going to fight at a catch weight of 160. So that, for me, opening up the main card, that's a good reason to make sure you're in your seat for 8:30 UK time.
Again, the Team KF boys have been on such a run lately. It's been absolutely unbelievable. So that's brilliant. Obviously, time is coming against us here, Brad. Run us through some of the other fights on the card. The best nickname in MMA is on this card, Ali Shawarma. But what else we'll be looking forward to on Saturday night?
Did you just call him Ollie Shawarma?
I love a
shawarma as well.
Sweet shawarma, that doesn't even matter. Oh, God.
You might have sweet and sour sauce
there we go.
On your shawarma.
There we go. We'll take it.
Ollie Sawa, 6-0, undefeated, banging guys out left, right, and centre. He's facing Damiano Scogna, an undefeated prospect from Italy. He's 5-0-1. That's got fireworks written all over it. That's going to be your feature prelim on the card. Naglis Kanashauskas, coming off the back of a very controversial points loss in the title bout against Dario Balandi earlier this year. A lot of people feeling that should have gone the other way. Personally, I felt it was a very, very close fight, probably a bit of a toss-up. But he's back in action. He's taking on the undefeated rising prospect, Joe Middleton. Middleton just 3-0, but exceptionally talented and very, very dangerous. And then if you look down the undercard, you've got Tom Creasy, brother of Sam Creasy, back in action, taking on Raz Bring. Callum Hoyan taking on Josh Adeboye. He looked fantastic in his Cage Warriors debut early this year. And Yusuf Ali Taleb from GB Top Team taking on Antonio Amadeo. It's a big card. I think we're looking at 14 fights as things stand right now. So it's going to be a very hot, but hopefully very fun night in the capital next Saturday.
Brad, thank you very much for joining me. July 12th, the UFC Fight Pass. Get down there to the Indigo at the O2 if you're looking for if you're around London and looking for a ticket. Go down and get there one because you'll see the future stars and maybe a current star in the main event as the championship is on the line in the flyweight division. We leave it there. Thank you very much to Brad for joining me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com and we'll see you all next time.